Ava from Peachy Paws Studios. In this video, I'll be showing you how to make an adorable animal face pillow plush using long pile faux fur, minky, and baby soft vinyls from Big C Fabric. Let's get started!
For this project, you will need your paper pattern, fabric and non-fabric scissors, some pens to mark the fabric, pins, black and white thread, a needle for hand sewing, a brush or a comb to pick faux fur seams, a 6" by 8" cut of vinyl used for the eyes and mouth, I chose black, a 5" by 8" cut of vinyl used for the insides of the ears, I chose pink, a 7" by 7" cut of faux fur used for the cheek fluff, I chose white, a 2 foot by 2 foot cut of minky fabric used for the face of the animal, I chose white to match my design, and some polyfill stuffing. First, we'll begin by preparing the pattern. This pattern is symmetrical, so you only need to cut 1/2. Here's a pattern I've already prepared. I'll begin by cutting out the mouth, eyes, ears, and cheek fluff. I'll take a pen and create lines where the cheek fluff meets the face to remind myself later. Here I'll take my scissors and cut that out as well. Now we're ready to transfer the pattern onto the minky. I'll take my minky and make a note of the pile direction and draw an arrow to indicate that direction. It doesn't matter which way the minky goes, just keep it consistent. Here I'll take my pattern, lining it up about 1/2 inch or 1 centimeter away from the edge and selvage. I'll trace all around my pattern piece and inside all the details as well. I'll make small lines in the middle to help me line up the pattern later. I'll flip the pattern and repeat this on the other side, tracing all around the outside and inside details. I'll also transfer on the small lines we just made to help remind me where the cheek fluffs will attach to the face. Now I'll cut out the piece using my fabric scissors, leaving about 1 centimeter or 1/2 inch seam allowance around the entire piece. Now I'll take my cut of minky again and flip my pattern piece onto it. I'll take my marker and create a line all the way around this piece, creating a second half that will match the first. I'll take my fabric scissors and cut this piece out right on the line we just drew. These 2 cuts of minky will make the front and back of the face. Now we can work on our cheek fluffs. To begin, I'll take my marker and draw a line on the pattern indicating the pile direction of the fur. I'll take my pattern and place it on the backing of my faux fur to begin. I'll also make an arrow indicating the pile direction of my fur. I'll take my piece, leaving it about 1/2 inch or 1 centimeter away from the edge, and trace around. In between the pieces, I'll leave that same seam allowance. I'll be making 4 pieces of cheek fluff in total, 2 flipped on one side and 2 on the other. I'll begin cutting out my 4 cheek fluffs using very short snips from my scissors. I like to cut just the backing using my scissors in order to preserve the long flowy pile of my faux fur. You can also use an X-Acto knife to make this quicker. I cut around all 4 cheek fluffs using short snips to preserve the pile. Now that all 4 fluffs are cut out, we can begin pinning them to the face. To start, I take my pins and line up the cheek fluff with the line we made on the face earlier. I place pins going through both layers of my fabric, beginning with the top and bottom of my seam, then filling in the middle with pins later. Once this piece is pinned, I take it to my machine, sewing right down the line we made for seam allowance. I do a quick back stitch at the beginning and end of my seam. Now that we've done 1 cheek fluff, we can repeat this with the cheek fluff on the other side of the front of the face. This process will also be completed for the back piece of the face as well. This will leave us 2 face pieces with 4 cheek fluffs total. Now we'll begin appliquéing. I'll take my piece of vinyl used for my eyes and mouth, cut it in half, and in half again. I'll do the same with my piece of vinyl used for the insides of the ears. You can use less vinyl for these steps, I'm just using enough to fully show my steps. Now I'll take the vinyl, good side facing out, and pin it to my minky at the top and the bottom. I'll repeat this for the other side of the ear as well. Then I'll take it to my machine and sew all the way around the line we drew on our pattern, going through both the minky and the vinyl. I use a 3-stitch length for this. I wouldn't recommend going too much shorter. I take this seam super slow, pivoting and changing needle positions as I need. Once I reach the front of my seam, I do a quick back stitch to secure it. This is what it looks like. It's okay if it's not perfect, we'll be trimming this up later. I'll repeat these steps with the other ear. Now that both earpieces are attached, we're going to take our scissors and very carefully snip around the seam, leaving about 1 millimeter or 2 between the seam and our cut edge. I like to use this to clean up any imperfections and round out my pattern piece. Now that the ears are appliqued on, we're going to move on to the other side of the ear and then to our face. Our face pieces will be appliqued in the exact same way we just did the ear. I'll pin the vinyl pieces behind the minky, take it to my machine, and snip away the excess. I take the applique seam for the mouth and nose super slow. I pivot my needle a ton and lift up my presser foot constantly to avoid any bunching. It's okay if the seam takes you a while. Sewing such a small detail into vinyl can be tricky. Now I'll trim around the mouth and the nose. I'll do the same for the eyes as well. Now that both sides of our face are done, we're going to begin pinning them together to sew. First, I'll just take a pen and draw 2 lines at the chin to indicate where I'll be leaving the plush open for stuffing. I'll begin by pinning through both layers of fabric, starting at the top of the face. Faux fur can be tricky to pin and to sew. Here I am using my fingers to push the faux fur fibers inside the seam, then I pin in place to lock all the fibers inside. Here I pin all the way around the face. And then I take it to my machine. Here I'll be sewing all the way around our seam allowance edge, working extra careful over the faux fur seams. It may take your machine a second to get through both layers. That's okay, there's no rush. Now I'll take my scissors and snip off the excess seam allowance. This step isn't 100% necessary, but I do find it reduces bulk in the face and leaves for crisper seams on the outside. Now I'll turn my pillow inside out using the blunt end of my scissors to fully turn out the corners of the ears. I'll take my brush and brush out any of the fur fibers that got trapped inside the seam during the sewing process. Now I'll take my polyfill stuffing and begin stuffing the face out, working my way down from the tops of the ears to the bottom of the face. I take extra care to fully fill out the seams near the bottom of the ears. I find this reduces bunching. Lastly, I'll use a ladder stitch to close up the bottom of our plush pillow. A ladder stitch is performed by slowly weaving out through both sides of the fabric. I leave about 3 or 4 stitches of my ladder stitch in place, and then I pull it tight to secure the stitches, hiding all of our thread on the inside of the pillow. I ladder stitch this entire seam closed, adding more stuffing to fill out the face as needed. Now I'll tie off my thread and hide the knot. Your pillow is complete.
Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and your new animal face pillow plush. Happy crafting!